Hi guys, my name is Izzy,
And I'm Alec.
and we've actually served quite a bit in Capital Kids, so hopefully we've seen you around. But if not, we're super excited to read some chapters from Raider from the Sea today. We're going to be reading chapters 13 and 14, and we'll switch back and forth every
Yeah.
2 pages.
All right, let's jump right in.
Mikkel's Pledge. In the dark hours before dawn, Bree woke up knowing that something had changed. She no longer sensed the motion of the ship. Instead, she felt the boat being drawn up on shore. As she pushed back the reindeer hide covering her head, Bree saw Vikings turn the broom, the long pole at the bottom of the ship. After lining up the broom with the two ends of the ship, they drew the sail over 3 posts at the front, center, and back of the ship. Each post had a wide arm that held up the sail. From there, the Vikings spread the cloth over the sides of the ship, making a tent. The moment the wind was shut out, Bree felt the difference. As the inside of the longship grew warmer, she drifted back to sleep. When she woke again, Bree seemed to smell the sweet, heavy scent of a peat fire. Pushing back her blanket, she breathed deep and realized that no, she smelled a different kind of fire. Bree looked around. Already the other Irish had left the ship. So too had most of the Vikings. But then Bree heard voices. Without making a sound, she rolled over to look. Along the starboard side, someone had raised the end of the sail. 2 Vikings sat on their sea chests, Mikkel and Hawk. Morning light streamed in, giving Bree a good view of both of them. Your father will not be pleased, Hawk was saying. His piercing eyes looked even more fierce than usual. I will tell him if it's not your fault. You were ill, very ill. He will be angry with me that this happened. My father is old, resentment filled Mikkel's voice. I know better than he what needs to be done. No, Mikkel, you do not know better than your father what needs to be done. Mikkel's eyes blazed. Then he looked away as though realizing he had gone too far. I'm just doing what other Vikings do, he said quickly. Does that make it right? Hawk's voice was sharp now. Did you kill anyone?
No. Did your men kill anyone? From a moment, Mikkel was silent, as if wanting to avoid the truth. Finally, he answered, I don't know. You really don't know, or you don't want to know? I am the youngest son, Mikkel answered, as if explaining to a child. I won't inherit even one small piece of my father's land. Your father knows that, and so do I. There's not enough work to support me. Mikkel's voice was quieter now, but still resentful. If I marry someday, if I have a family, Hawk nodded. Your father and I know. In the fjords of Norway, there's little land to farm. And besides, you want adventure. As though they had finally found something on which to agree, Mikkel nodded. The anger disappeared from his eyes. Yes, I like adventure. I like roaming the seas. I like finding out what lies beyond the next fjord. Strange, Bree thought, and I wanted to see beyond the Wicklow Mountains. Mikkel's voice was respectful now, and Bree could hardly believe the change. Who was this man that Mikkel seemed to care about his approval? Your father put me in charge of you, Hawk said, as though he had heard Bree's question. Your father named you after a mighty prince. A mighty prince? Bree knew of only one mighty prince named Michael. He was in the Bible. How did Mikkel's father know about an angel? But Hawk went on. Your father outfitted you with the ship and the men to help you sail. He wants you to be a merchant, not a raider. What am I to tell him? That one raid made me rich. Hawk sighed. It's not enough for me. It won't be enough for your father. Then I will tell you, and you can tell him. I will listen to you and change my ways. Mikkel met Hawk's gaze, but it was easy to see that the old man did not believe him. Can a reindeer stop running across the frozen peaks, he asked. Can a fox no longer be sly in its ways? Mikkel was the first to glance away, as though thinking it through. He stared at a spot outside the ship. Finally, he looked straight into Hawk's eyes. I'll give you something as a pledge, something valuable. So, Bree thought, this man was supposed to be Mikkel's teacher, but is this a pledge or a bribe? Mikhail stood up and reached into his sea chest, taking out a package wrapped round and round in sealskin. He handed it to Hawk. When the older man took off the layers, he held up a book with a white calfskin cover. Bree gasped and almost cried out. Just in time, she clapped. She clapped a hand over her mouth.
As she watched, trying to remain silent, the morning sunlight caught the precious gems on the cover. The gems brought by pilgrims from many lands set the books apart as one of great value. For that is what it was, the four Gospels, carefully hand-copied by the monks of Glendalough. The four Gospels told about the life of Jesus. Hawk traced his hand over the cover. When his fingers touched each precious jewel, Bree felt sick all the way through. How could such a holy book, the Holy Scriptures themselves, fall into the hands of such unholy men? Inside Bree, a weeping began. She wanted only one thing, to take the precious book from them. See, Mikhail asked, it has great value. Value? A sob escaped Bree. Mikhail doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know it's not the cover, but the pages that are important. He doesn't know that the message of this book is the most valuable in all the world. And now something else bothered Bree, a wondering that wouldn't go away. Brother Cronin had planned to hide all the manuscripts on which there had been a great deal of work. What had gone wrong that this completed book was found? And what had happened to Cronin? Thinking about it, Bree couldn't push away her scared feelings. Deep inside, she felt torn to pieces. In that moment, Mikhail spoke. Get up, Bree, he commanded, as though he had known all along that she was there. Get some food. Unwilling to let Mikhail and Hawk see her tears, Bree wiped her eyes. But this was the most awful blow of all. Seeing that holy book in her hands was even worse than being taken away herself. But then, as Bree stood up, she felt a strange hope. In that quiet way of his, did Brother Cronin know that someone like her would desperately need the words of that precious book? Had he, for some reason, allowed it to be taken? When Bree stepped down from the long ship, she looked around. They landed on a small island with no shelter from the wind off the ocean. Long grasses stretched away from the sea, and the rolling wasteland seemed empty of life. From what Mikhail had told her, they must be in the outer Hebrides. Along the shore, prisoners were gathering any pieces of driftwood they could find. Vikings had built spits over 3 fires, and the sizzle and aroma of roasting meat filled the air. When the mutton was ready, the Vikings cut it apart with their knives. After taking all they wanted, they let the prisoners help themselves. Feeling hollow with hunger, Bree filled a wooden bowl and sat down with Lil. With no knife and a spoon that didn't gather up the meat, Bree ate in the only way she could, with her fingers. Looking around, she thought about every possibility for escape. Mikhail had chosen their stock carefully. No wonder he had untied their ropes the night before. No one would try to get away here. There was nowhere to go.
But Bree glanced back at the ship and remembered its name, Seabird. Again, she felt hope. The sails still lay over the sides of the boat, making a tent. In that moment, Bree knew what to do if she ever got the chance. Smiling, she tucked her idea away in the secrecy of her thoughts. She would watch. She would wait. At just the right moment, she would act. And for now, she would build up her strength. For the first time since leaving the Wicklow Mountains, Bree ate until she was full. Then she noticed that Lil hadn't touched her meat. You must eat, Bree whispered. If you don't, you'll be too weak to escape. Escape? The girl's voice was as soft as the breath of air. A motion of her hand took on the barren rock, the few trees bent by the wind off the sea, the lack of any house or human being. What hope is there of escape? Bree's whisper back sounded fierce, even to her own ears. We will hope until the day we die. Lil's smile spread up into her blue eyes. Watching her, Bree felt satisfied. When the ship set sail again, the woman prisoner named Nola called Bree over. Look what I have, she said. Let's put our time to good use. From the sea chest, Nola had taken pieces of sealskin that were big enough to make for warm garments for Bree and the other girls. Nola even had strong needles and the right kind of thread. It made Bree curious. How had Nola managed to be the most prepared woman on the ship? It's something to be glad about, isn't it? Nola said as she loaned out her precious needles. When the Vikings found me, I was on my way to visit a friend. We always sew as we talk. All the women needed was something for cutting and the sealskin. When Bree asked Mikkel, he let Nola use the knife, but he stood next to her like a watchdog. Bree started by sewing a little garment for Lil. With straight, loose lines, it would fit over the linen dress she already wore. Since only 2 shoulder and 2 side seams were needed, the sewing went fast. All morning, the women and girls worked. Before long, Bree also finished the sealskin garment for herself. As she worked, she looked up often to watch the coastline of the inner Hebrides. When they sailed past the rugged peaks of the Isle of Skye, Bree stood at the side of the boat. The low clouds rolled across, hiding the mountains. In the choppy waters of the North Meach, a wide strait that separated the west coast of Scotland from a large island, Bree saw her chance to talk with Hawk. When she sat down on his sea chest, Bree hurried over.
Close up, Hawk's nose, hook nose and piercing eyes seemed even more frightening, but now Bree saw him through tears. The tears were for the loss of the Holy Scriptures and her brother Cronin and Bree's questions about his safety. But her tears also softened her view of Hawk. For the first time, she saw him as he really was, a growing old man who lived an empty life. Bree spoke in a voice so quiet that no one else could hear. I noticed that you have a big book in your sea chest. As Hawk turned to her, the coldness in his face struck Bree like the north wind. Seeing his hardened look, Bree felt afraid. Just the same, she went on. I know the gems on the cover are worth a lot to you, but I can read the stories inside the book. Do you want me to read them to you? Hawk's head snapped up. You, a girl, know how to read? I don't believe you. His piercing eyes met hers. If ever the book is missing, I'll know you're the thief. As fear leaped in her heart, Bree stepped back. But then her thoughts grew strong. Just wait, Bree promised herself. She would watch and be ready. If Hawk thought she was just a girl who couldn't read, he might not guess the other things she could do. Once again, Bree thought about her plan to escape. And I'll take Lil with me. Late in the afternoon, the seabirds stopped again on the barren island. This time, the Vikings carried a long iron kettle off the ship, filled it with water, and set it over a fire. As the cold water came to a boil, one of the men dropped in dried cod. When the fish was ready, Bree served it to the prisoners and did her best to offer both food and courage. Many of them looked up and returned her greeting. Others only managed to meet her eyes. Still others stayed inside their fear. Already, many of the Irish had become friends. Thrown together by cruelty, they worked against the Vikings in whatever way they could. They had also learned their own secret ways to help one another. Sitting down at last, Bree ate her fill, then took more. When she glanced towards Lil, the younger girl was doing the same, storing up strength for when they managed to escape. As the Vikings heard the prisoners back on board, one of the sailors edged over to Mikkel. What are you going to do with the slaves? He asked in a low voice. Glancing towards Bree, Mikkel saw her listening. Be silent, he ordered the man. Bree turned away, unwilling to let Mikkel know how much she wanted to hear his answer. It wasn't hard to see that he talked one way to Hawk, another way to his men, and still another way in front of her. Which one was the real Mikkel?
Sitting on the deck again, Bree thought about the different sides Mikkel had shown. His underhanded ways frightened her. Dev wished me courage to win, but how can I have that kind of courage? For years, Bree had dreamed of traveling to the world outside of the Wicklow Mountains. That had been her quest, what she cared deeply about. But now there was something Bree needed to face. Mikkel owns my future, and I can't trust him. The fear Bree had seen in the eyes of the other prisoners seemed to be catching. Then Bree remembered she didn't have warm clothes or shelter or enough food. The Lord had given her all those things. In the moment that she thanked him, Bree's fear disappeared. There was something she knew. I don't have to be able to trust Mikkel. The thoughts had surprised her. Bree let the comfort go deep, knowing that it was really true. As if ropes had fallen off her heart, Bree started to pray. Lord, I just want to tell you again, I don't understand what you're doing, but you're in charge of my future. I choose to trust you. Then Bree remembered her brother. I wonder what's happening to Dev. Is he able to trust you in the same way? Chapter 14.
Can you get the picture?
As Devin and Jeremy finished eating, their new friend and Master O'Neill turned to them. Now, lads, you're our guests for the night. Where you be, and we'll take care of that. You are safe. In the morning, you can go on with your journey, but first, we'll give you a change of clothes. Devin held up his hand, saying no. It was too much, but Master O'Neill would have none of it. Warm clothes we'll give you, and a change of shirts. If this man should see you, I myself will cut their hair a different way, says Mrs. O'Neill. When these lads leave, their own mothers won't know them. After breakfast, the next morning, she took out a comb and scissors. Setting a stool on the hard earth outside the door, she told Devin to sit down. Under her hand, hair flew in every direction. As it collected on the ground around his feet, Devin grew uneasy, then afraid. Would there be anything left? But when she was done, Mrs. O'Neill handed him a mirror. Seeing himself, Devin grinned. A handsome lad you are, she teased. No one but the Colleens, the girls, will notice you. But Jeremy wasn't as pleased with his haircut. When he looked at himself, he scowled. Devin kicked Jeremy's foot, shushing him to keep quiet. Then they both put on clothing Mrs. O'Neill laid out for them. She had taken care of the color of their shirts was different. Instead of the blue and red they wore the day before, the shirts were light brown. If someone saw them from a distance, they wouldn't be as noticeable. When Devin and Jeremy were ready to leave, Master O'Neill gave Devin his green cloak. Devin shook his head, not wanting to accept more, but the kind man wouldn't listen. You'll be warm in this. A boy the size of Jeremy gave him a jacket, and Mrs. O'Neill added a rolled-up blanket. Master O'Neill went outside to give them directions. You walked the wrong way yesterday, he said, as he told them how to go back the way they came.
Then the family gathered in a circle around them. The oldest child spoke first. May the road rise to meet you. The next three children each gave a line. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. As the family finished the blessing, even the youngest child joined in. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. Feeling sure he was too old to show tears, Devin blinked. The hollow of God's hand. Yes, that is where he needed to be. The family sent them on their way with a bundle filled with Irish bread and slices of cheese. With the sea on their left and the green hills of Ireland on their right, Devin and Jeremy set out for home. To keep them from getting lost, Master O'Neill had sent them back to the path along the coast. Devin soon found that his stiffness from falling was worse today. More often than Devin liked, Jeremy stopped to give him a chance to rest. If you take care now, your knees will heal faster, the boy told him. But Devin wanted to get home and made himself keep on. It was a long walk back to the bay where the Vikings had come ashore. When Devin looked down on the place where he said goodbye to Bree, his angry feelings returned. Somehow I'll rescue her, he promised himself. I'll make sure that Vikings never catch our family again. By now his knees hurt so much that Devin forgot to be careful. As he and Jeremy walked around the bay, they stayed on the flat, open ground at the top of the cliff. With only a quick glance towards the bushes where he'd seen the red shirt, Devin kept walking. When Jeremy wanted to stop at a cottage, Devin insisted that they push on. By late afternoon, he felt sorry about his choice. Soon it would be dark and they needed a place to sleep. Still walking along the coast, they kept looking inland for a place that would offer shelter. Before long, the blue waters of the North Channel turned black. Then the rays of the setting sun cast a sheet of flame over the water. Devin limped so badly that he couldn't walk another step, and now he felt uneasy besides. When he whirled around and saw no one following, Devin climbed a rock at the side of the path. In every direction he looked, he saw no one and decided he was just imagining things. The tired muscles wrapped around his weary bones. No farmer's cottage set out a welcome light, and night was upon them. Then, as Devin looked toward the sea, he knew what to do. Below him and not far off, a small piece of land jutted out into the sea. Water surrounded the land, but one small rocky strip led out from the shore. Was the connecting land far enough from the path so that people who passed by wouldn't notice? Once more, Devin looked around and studied every direction. When he felt it was safe, he spoke to Jeremy. Come on. Okay, guys, that's just the 2 chapters that we're going to read today. But we hope you keep listening and reading. The story is getting really good.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.